I came across a study by Gartner that predicts by next year, AI-generated content will account for 30% of the total content produced by enterprises. Now, let's face it, generative AI has had a very good year. Corporations like Microsoft, Adobe, and GitHub are integrating the tech into their products. Startups are raising hundreds of millions to compete with them, and the software even has cultural clout, with text-to-image AI models spawning countless memes. But listen in on any industry discussion about generative AI, and you'll hear in the background a question whispered by advocates and critics alike in increasingly concerned tones. Is any of this actually legal? Now, the question arises because of the way generative AI systems are trained. Like most machine learning software, they work by identifying replicating patterns in data. But because these programs are used to generate code, text, music, whatever, you have it. That data is itself created by humans, scraped from the web, and copyright protected in one way or another. Now, I share this because there's been much written about the application of AI to the production of content, and in particular podcasts as well. But it's not all good news. There are a lot of concerns, so privacy, algorithmic bias, ethical implications, and automated decision-making, plus the obvious, will AI take our jobs? Now, ultimately, the question is, will AI developments help or hurt the industry? And I figured, given all of this, it'd be best to explore the issues with someone who is deep in the weeds, so to speak, of using AI in their podcast production processes. But we'll get to that in a bit. Hello and welcome to the Predictable B2B Success podcast brought to you by Sproutlet.com. I'm Vinay Koshy, and our guest today is Mark Savant. Mark, thank you for coming on. You are the founder of Mark Savant Media, a podcast production agency that helps busy professionals build status and sales with podcasts. You help with things like new show launches, full service production, and group training programs, if I understand this correctly. You are also the host of the globally ranked top 1% podcast After Hours Entrepreneur, a show which aims to give you actionable items that you can apply to grow your own thriving, profitable business. And of course, you also have the After Hours Entrepreneur Mastermind program. I'm curious, Mark, given all of this, what got you started in this whole space of podcast production?
Wow. Yeah. So before I go into that, I will say that yes, AI is going to take your job. So you need to start learning it now. I just want to shake people at the beginning here because failure to adapt is going to be very detrimental to you and your family. So adapt now. It's not all doom and gloom. And hopefully you can walk away with some ways that you can leverage AI in your daily life to stay relevant in your industry. So as far as just a quick 30-second background, after I graduated from college, I got into the insurance industry. I was selling property and casualty insurance, leading a small team. I did that for about 5 years till I recognized I hated it. I started experimenting with different things. And then I started getting into podcasting. 5 years later, I owned my own podcast production agency. I work with clients all over the world to build thought leadership and automate their podcasts and grow their podcasts. It's been incredibly successful. I just love podcasting. I'm now, by the way, Vinay, you got 370 episodes, brother. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Rob's brother. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm about to cross 370 myself. That's a good benchmark.
Brilliant. And it's one thing to produce a podcast. It's quite another to get into the whole production side of things. Was there a specific event or incident that triggered that journey?
So I like to see people podcasting, and we can talk about that in this episode, but I think it's one of the best ways to future-proof yourself. And we can talk about why I think that, but I think podcasting is one of the best ways to stay relevant during this tumultuous, disruptive time. So I want to see more people podcasting, and the vast majority of people quit podcasting because there's a lot of stuff to figure out. Editing, I have to figure out the RSS feed. I have to figure out YouTube. I have to figure out titles. I have to figure out descriptions and copywriting, distribution and marketing. So there's a lot to figure out. And so what I try to do is try to make it as simple as possible. The more simple it is, the more likely you're going to have an impactful show that's going to build your network, build your authority, present new opportunities. And there's some people go out there and saying, I'll help you make a lot of money. I'll help you grow your podcast. And that's definitely, I've had success there. But what I'm focused on is the systems. How do we, and that's, I think, where AI comes in, because AI solves a lot of problems in production that historically have been very time consuming and expensive. All my focus is on how to make podcasting easier for more people.
Mhm. And I'd love to dive into that in a bit. But I'm also curious, what would you say, given your journey to date, is your personal area of strength?
My personal area of strength, and that's a tough question, Vinny. I've got to self-assess myself. I would say that I'm very open to new ideas. I think I like testing out new stuff, like
Mhm.
trying new stuff. I like working with my team and empowering them, bringing them from a level 2 to a level 8 or level 9, building, just making sure that systems work. I also have become and I apologize in advance, I've become very, I think, aggressive
Mhm.
when it comes to content creation and production, because there's some really important stuff that's happening in the world right now. And I feel like people need to be shook. They need to be shaken
Mhm.
a little bit, because sometimes it takes a massive event to create the massive change that's required. And the World Economic Forum anticipates that within 2 years, 85 million jobs are going to be displaced due to AI. And frankly, I think that's on the low end. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to shake people and get them ready for AI and the impact in their industry now. But you don't lose your job to a
Mhm.
22-year-old Malaysian kid that knows how to prompt engineer. You need to get slapped in the face now so you can survive what's happening next.
Absolutely. And with this idea of being open to new ideas and testing things, what would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
Bring this back to AI, Vinny. Most companies are just, we understand that AI, artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
generative AI is important. We understand that's important. We understand that social media is important. We understand that having a presence online is important. But what a lot of us fail to realize is like how to actually start.
Mhm.
What does it actually mean? That's just for the big dogs. Yeah, Walmart's going to be automating 65% of their stores within 3 years. That's for Walmart, but that's not going to change me. I run a mom and pop. That's not going to, how does that impact me? I'm an executive of a company. I don't need to know how to use ChatGPT. I don't need to use it. I'll just hire an assistant to do that. Guess what? Your assistant's going to take your job because they're going to be better at it than you are. I think it can be very difficult and scary and complicated. So I'm just trying to make AI and generative AI more accessible and more
Mhm.
practical without having to be some sort of coder. We need to make it practical and accessible now, because so many hundreds of millions of jobs are going to be changed forever.
Yeah. Just going back to what you were saying, you are of the belief that podcasts can future proof your career prospects. I'm curious, why would you say that, especially in light of what's happening with generative AI and the fact that it uses these vast amounts of these large language models to educate itself and recognize patterns, which then is used to produce even further amounts of content.
So there's a few reasons, Vinny, why podcasting is the way to future proof yourself. But the primary way is the brand equity that you build.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things that are going to be replaceable, but brand equity, relationships, experience, those are going to be harder things to replace.
Mhm.
But very easy to replace is someone that can look over a bunch of data and make a hypothesis or an assessment, conclude that data. Very easy to replicate is going to be anything that has to do with text and writing. That's all going to be easy. But what's going to be hard to replace are thought leaders.
Mhm.
And podcasting puts you in a unique position to be a thought leader in your industry, because the way to survive is to start adapting the new ideas, adapting the new technology, collaborating with developers, and then being loud as hell in your industry.
Mhm.
Not just sitting behind the desk and be like, oh, I don't want to put my face out there. You're dead. You just don't know it. What's going to work is adopting it, being very loud, and then being seen as a thought leader in your industry. You're going to be irreplaceable. And even if you never get a single download on your podcast, the brand equity that you will get from being out there, being loud, being noisy, it will be irreplaceable. You'll make yourself irreplaceable, because the 20-year-old Malaysian kid that we're talking about that's really good at prompt engineering doesn't have the brand equity that you do, doesn't have the
Mhm.
relationships that you do, isn't seen as a thought leader as you are.
And someone listening to that would probably be thinking loud. I'm not necessarily loud. Loud can also be annoying. So could you clarify what you mean by loud?
It's disruptive.
Right.
You're being loud, you're being disruptive. And one of the ways you can do that is you can look at your industry as a whole, look at all the influencers from authors to podcasters to YouTubers to newspapers to media to all the biggest studies and pollsters, like whatever. Look at all the big influencers in your niche and say, what do they all believe? What are the commonly held beliefs in my industry right now? And where are they wrong? Where are the places they're wrong? And by adapting and being loud and by being noisy and by being disruptive, you can carve out a new slot. History is not going to remember the normal. I hate to use the word normal. It's not going to remember the average person. History is going to remember the people that were that adopted stuff new, that were blazing trails, that were connecting, that were building their Rolodex. You're going to annoy some people for sure. I had James Altucher on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he said, Mark, if I'm writing something, if I'm not worried what people think, I'm not going to write it. You want to have success in media, you want to stand out, you're going to need to be willing to ruffle some feathers.
I'm curious though, with this idea of producing a podcast, and certainly AI tools can help with the production and the process of it, and we might get into that in a bit. But probably one of the biggest concerns is that of sponsorship. Now, I've read articles, and I'm sure you're aware that there's even use cases of AI being used to produce podcasts. Are we, in a sense, just contributing to the overall noise? And is there any way to distinguish ourselves from that background noise that's perhaps increasingly coming to our industry?
Yeah, as content becomes easier and more scalable, then yes, there's going to be a lot more noise. And you're probably seeing that already. And this is where I just lean back to that previous example that I gave. Because what you're seeing is 95% of creators out there, what 95% of posts that you see is just someone repeating what they heard from someone that was repeating what they heard from someone that was repeating what they heard. It's all this regurgitated, recycled, diluted information. And it's not interesting. Nobody cares. Take that information and explain why it's wrong. And now all of a sudden you're turning some heads. And I think that's where you want to be to stand out. It's not necessarily the quality of your camera, although that matters. It's not necessarily the quality of your audio, although that's important too. What matters is that you're bringing new, fresh ideas to the table that people haven't heard before. And that's when you can start to stand out with your content.
So put this another way, but would I be wrong in saying that you really need to be driven by a purpose or a cause, so to speak? You're obviously very passionate about this whole idea of educating people around the use of AI and making it something that will augment and boost your business or career. Would that be a fair comment?
Yes, but it's not necessarily about saving the rainforest or feeding a million kids in Africa, which are obviously amazing things to do, right? But when it comes to content, if you apply, this applies to every industry. Every single professional in every industry is concerned about AI's impact on their job. Just about every single one. Everybody's heard of it. Everybody's aware that it's there. They're just not sure exactly how. What we're seeing is disruption on a scale that we've never seen before. Maybe you might say that the introduction of the internet in the transition from brick and mortar to online, you might say that's not as disruptive as what AI is going to do to the white collar jobs, the white collar workers out there. It changes everything. It changes everything. I mentioned Walmart earlier. 65% of the stores are going to be automated. Retail is the number one employer of Americans. 65% of those stores are going to be automated. Checkers, which is a very large fast food chain in the United States, they've already done away with tellers. So you're actually ordering with an AI bot. An AI bot says, welcome to Checkers, and you order. So everything is going to be, all these industries are going to be impacted. I give you more examples, but that's where you start with your content. You start by saying, hey, everyone, our industry is going to change. And here's why. there's this tool and there's this software and there's this company. And this is a guy I talked to last week who's developing a solution, right? And so by positioning yourself as the disruptive element, not by someone who's saying, no, stay back, I'm afraid. You're saying, I'm adapting it because it is happening. It will happen. And we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but by positioning yourself as a thought leader, it's going to open up immense opportunities. You'll make yourself irreplaceable in your organization.
Makes a lot of sense. Perhaps the biggest concern for most podcasters would be monetization of their podcast. Now, a lot of people hold closely to this notion that sponsorships is pretty much everything. You, I believe, have a different outlook on that.
Yeah, sponsorships are not the best way to monetize your influence in your podcast. I've generated thousands of dollars from sponsorships, tens of thousands at this point. But I think the best way to monetize a podcast from day one is via the relationships that you're building and the products or services that you offer. So as an example, it's a very powerful sales tool for getting straight past the gatekeepers, the people you want to talk to. If you're in sales, if you're trying to sell a product, if you're trying to collaborate with someone, it's pretty easy to get stonewalled on LinkedIn where talk to my assistant or no, I don't want to buy your thing. But if you invite them onto a podcast, now you're developing a relationship that is led with value. And so by having the right systems on the front end, on the back end, you can convert those people into paying clients.
Yeah, interesting. Could you describe those systems on the front and the back end?
Sure. It starts with who you're selecting as guests. Because as soon as you have a podcast, everybody wants to be on your show, which is great. Thank you for bringing me on the show. I recognize how much of an honor it is. When you're selecting guests, don't just select, oh, there's Jim from down the street and I have my friend. Don't bring your friends on. Bring the people on that you want to talk to because they'll help generate more income for your business. Maybe they offer a very strategic referral partner, right? So it starts with who you select to come on your show, right? You give them a great experience. It's smooth. It's clean. You're very clear about what you do, and you try. And during the interview, you're talking about how you can help them. You bring up real stories. Oh, I was working with a property manager a few weeks ago, and I was able to provide them with a home care solution that was amazing. Whatever your solution is, so you're using it as a referral tool, and then afterwards, in your email follow-ups, you're putting them into some sort of CRM. You're following up strategically. You're sending them assets. You're creating content, you're tagging them on LinkedIn, you're giving them a good experience, you're reaching out on a regular basis, not annoying them, but maybe you're sending them video messages or audio messages or inviting them to follow up. There's this feeling of reciprocation that's happened. And as you lean into that in a nuanced way, it can lead to great fruit in the future.
That makes sense. So it's more of an organic way of building relationships and taking people deeper into the relationship, as opposed to a quick use of podcast as a sale.
Well, it could.
Okay.
And I've seen sales organizations use podcasts as a way. So let's say you're a big organization, you have your whole sales team as part of the podcast. You can invite, it depends on your budget, but you can invite dozens of people onto your show every week. And you're just bringing the leads in, putting them through a formal funnel. So you could also use it as a top of funnel.
So, yep. Makes a lot of sense. So, obviously, you want the podcast not just as a means to get leads onto your show, but to actually educate and maybe inform to a degree as well. How did you help your clients think through that whole process?
It's day one. The first session that we have, I hop on a call and I try to get an understanding of what they're trying to accomplish to see if they're a fit for what I do, to make sure that I can help them if I can. Then we talk through, hey, what's your goals? Let's be realistic. Let's put the systems in place. This is the hardware you need. And after launching dozens and dozens of shows, I have a good system down that's a good fit. It's also helpful. A lot of clients have a lot of really great ideas, like very grandiose ideas. We'll set up this big studio and then we'll drive down. I'll fly people in and I'll go put on these live presentations and these big events and I'll have videographers and that's great. Love that. Love that. But the number one reason why podcasts fail is that they're too complicated. We got to simplify it down, record a Zoom call, fill out a Google form. We handle the rest. And we set up the right systems on the front end and on the back end. We automate that through calendar apps and remote recording apps like Zoom as an example, so that we make it as easy as possible. I've seen too many podcasts. I've looked at too many surveys. I've talked to too many experts. Podcasts are dropped because of an unrealistic expectation and underestimating the work. We eliminate all of that. We make it as simple as possible to keep it going.
Absolutely. There are a fair few moving parts. I'm assuming you're leveraging AI as part of the processes and systems that you've developed. Could you talk to us a bit about how that comes to bear?
Ooh, yeah. So I've got quite a few YouTube videos on this topic because AI really enhances your ability to produce a great show. There's programs like Descript that can very easily go into an audio or video file and find words or segments that you want to remove. It's got editing built into it. There's AI softwares like Midjourney, or gosh, there's another one I just heard of, Legion, something like that, can create, you turn your text into beautiful graphic art. You can automate that. You can incorporate Google Forms by using Zapier with ChatGPT to create amazing content automatically using ChatGPT, using ChatGPT's AI generative software. There's programs that can turn entire videos into really well-written blogs. There's so many possibilities are endless. We're using a bot right now in this Zoom call that's probably going to be transcribing. I use a program called Avoma, which transcribes the whole call. It uses AI to create special notes and notations during the call. So if there's stuff that I forget, it'll help me to remember that. What else? AI can create its own audio. Meta just announced that they have a program that is going to be text to audio sound effects. So you can type in boy laughs loudly while he chases a dog barking or something, and it will, using AI, create that exact sound for the background, for the foreground sound. It sounds amazing. So there's just the possibilities are limitless. They're absolutely there's AI video. You can create you can type in text and get really solid looking video right from that text. That is already here. It's got a little bit of a ways to go, but we're like just a few years out from you being able to create an entire movie just by typing in text. And you'll get an entire AI generated movie. There's an influencer now. Let me see if I can find her name. There's an AI influencer. Her name's Lil McQuella. She's an influencer. She's not a human. She's AI. She has millions of followers across multiple platforms. She has a net worth of $8 million. Excuse me. She has an 8-figure net worth. Excuse me. It's more than that. It's 10 mil plus net worth. She gets paid $10,000 per Instagram post. She's been recently featured in a Calvin Klein ad. So like the possibilities are endless. We don't know where this stuff is going. And this is why I can't repeat it enough. Adopting the change, being vocal, being loud, letting everyone in your industry know that you're using this stuff is so important for staying relevant, because you will be replaced. There's no doubt you will be replaced unless you're staying relevant. You're staying on top of this stuff.
So at a base level, understanding prompts in order to best use AI, it need to be something in pretty much everyone's wheelhouse, so to speak. But I'm curious, you mentioned in tying Google Forms with ChatGPT via Zapier. What's the use case for that?
So I could give you a few. One, it can be useful for creating show notes for your show. After you finish the podcast episode, you type in some key takeaways and you can get an entire show description written like that. So that's one option. I'll give you another option. This is a really powerful marketing tool for everyone out there. I'm into AI, podcasting, maybe not. Here's something that will work out. You've got a website, probably, and you probably want to write stuff on your website via a blog. You probably want to have a blog. Content creation is important for your website's search engine optimization, for your SEO. What you can do is you can create a Google form, and let's say that you want to connect with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, just as an example. Reach out to CEOs, reach out to their assistants and say, hey, I'd love to feature John Smith on my website blog. It's a very simple process. If you could just have him fill out this quick Google form, it'll take him about 3 minutes. We'll write up a really nice article on our website. They fill out the form. ChatGPT automatically writes out the title. It's SEO-rich. It writes out the entire description. And then you can have one of your assistants or yourself go through, clean it up, add some different things, and then voila, you have a blog for your website. And what's powerful about this, Vinay, is you don't need to be an expert blog writer to make this happen, which is, I think this is a really powerful concept here. AI turns mediocre or even poor creators into very good creators. You can hire someone from overseas that doesn't even speak, that speaks very poor English, and you could turn them from a level 2 writer to a level 8 or 9 writer by using AI. And why that's important is now all of a sudden you've replaced, you're seeing this in Hollywood right now. Hollywood is on strike right now. The Writers Guild is ticked because they're losing their jobs. They're afraid of AI, and they should be. Because why would I hire a room full of writers spending millions of dollars when I can hire that? I hate to pick on Malaysia. When I can hire a 22-year-old in Malaysia who can use ChatGPT and AI to write scripts. It doesn't make sense. They're screwed and they realize it, and they're trying to go on strike to save themselves, but it's not going to work. AI is here. It's already happening. What they should be doing, let me just add this. Sure. What they should be doing is adapting the AI and being really loud and noisy. And that's not going to save everybody, but it will save the people that start adopting those tools. And then you can make a better impact and you can help your coworkers as you lead the way.
I was having a conversation with someone the other day who obviously is very well established in the whole content and copywriting space. He was saying that AI enables everybody these days to lift their game, so to speak. And therefore, people are under the impression that we're good now. But really, all it's done is lift the game for everybody. You know, the whole idea of lifting all, and the rising tide lifts all boats. So with that in mind, what do we need to now keep in mind from your perspective about making sure that our brand voice is still very clear and the content that we produce is unique to the purposes of our brand?
You go into it with a strategy, right? I don't just show up to these podcasts and be like, what am I going to talk about? No, I've sat down, I've done the work. I've looked at my competition. I look at what they talk about. I'm educated on my topic. I have data. I have stats. I have personal use stories of how I'm using this stuff. And then the rest solves itself because you already have a plan about what you want to talk about. And because you're keeping up with it, you stay relevant. Like I said earlier, if you're not sure about what you want to be talking about for your personal brand, if you're not sure what you want to be talking about for your show, best place to start is look at what is everybody else talking about. And you'll probably agree with a lot of stuff they're talking about. That's good. You can agree. But there's going to be stuff that they're talking about that you don't agree with. That's the stuff that you want to talk about. Loud, proud, vocal, noisy. You want to call people out if that's your thing. But what ends up happening is you can make a massive name for yourself in your industry by doing that. And you might not necessarily want that, but by staying up to date, by finding very commonly held ideas that you disagree with, you're gonna be able to stand out, which to me is what's most important to survive this. You don't want to just be another number because numbers will be replaced by AI. But your brand equity, the messaging that you're delivering, that's not going to be replaced because there is, I think, a craving for authenticity.
Absolutely. I'd agree with you on that one. Prompts are obviously a key part of maximizing your ability to use these large language models and generative AI. What's exciting you the most in that space?
So prompts, basically, just to keep everyone up to date, is when you ask or give a direction to an AI bot and the AI bot goes out and executes it. The better your prompt, the better the result. Better input, better output. There's a lot of things, like there's a couple things with ChatGPT I really like just asking it to write something more compelling is great. Asking ChatGPT to give you references to websites when it's giving you information, because inaccuracy is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have with AI right now. That's the biggest fear, especially if you're at a big organization. You don't want to put out the wrong stuff. There was an attorney that was citing fake AI generated case law in a court, got in trouble. Doing your due diligence there. One of the things, again, you can ask ChatGPT to do is to give you examples and citations, which I think is important. If you're new to ChatGPT, sometimes it'll stop writing in the middle of a sentence. You'll be like, what the hell? It stopped. Just ask it to continue. It'll pick up where it left off. So those are a few kind of beginner things. But another thing that I'm really excited about is ChatGPT. I believe in ChatGPT 5, this is coming. is going to be giving prompt examples or prompt help. So think about it like this. When you're going into Google and you're typing in something and Google just knows what you want to type in, ChatGPT will make it easier to type in better prompts, which I think will be helpful.
Is there a particular way in which you are using a prompt in order to help with your podcast production overall?
Oh, sure. ChatGPT, I use in so many examples. So one of the more difficult things to do with starting a new podcast, for example, is coming up with a good title for your show. That is really freaking hard. If you go into ChatGPT or these AI bots, you can give it certain keywords that rank highly, certain words that you know that your audience is going to be searching for, prompt it by saying, hey, you're an expert SEO copywriter with dozens of years of podcast experience. Please give me a title for my show. My show is about this, and you explain what your show is about. Make sure to focus on these keywords. And it's a really powerful way of starting to get some titles together. I've had tremendous success coming up with some amazing titles. Same thing for podcast descriptions. Again, like the sky's the limit, I think, when it comes to this stuff. Those are a few examples of how we're using ChatGPT to brainstorm. I'll give you another example. My mother was working on a project for her university. Yeah, I know. My mom goes to school. Don't make fun of her. She goes to college. It's her master's in gardening or something like that. Anyway,
wow.
I digress. So she said, and she was assigned this project to write about certain types of gardening in the state of Florida, right? Some best practices and FAQs. And I walked into the room and her head was in her hands. She's, I'm so frustrated. I have to write this. I don't even know where to start. I'm frozen. I said, stop, come here. I want to show you something. I brought her into my office and I just typed in exactly that. You're a master gardener. You've been in the state of Florida for 25 years. What are some frequently asked questions that people might have about growing gardens and agriculture? Gave me 20. I said, okay, give me 20 more. By the end of it, she walked away with 100 different ideas on where she could get started. And so it's not necessarily about having AI do all the writing for you, but just to get your juices flowing. And then you might find 5 ideas out of 100 that you really like. And then you could go from there.
Certainly. And is there a plugin that you tend to lean on more so than others?
So ChatGPT has started releasing several different plugins. To be frank, I haven't gotten a chance to do a deep dive into all the plugins yet. The Zapier plugin I like a lot. Like I mentioned, there's some cool ways you can automate. ChatGPT also does like web scraping. I had a roundabout way of doing that, but ChatGPT now will allow you to just scrape your website for text and find ways to optimize your website, which I think is really cool. Again, I'll be diving more into that on my YouTube channel in the coming weeks.
Okay, brilliant. We'll include a link to that in the show notes. Let's look forward a bit. If there's a level of democracy coming to this whole idea of developing prompts, where should our focus be as generative AI and AI in general evolves and develops?
So one of the things that's interesting about AI is it's moving so quickly. So the answer of what do we do as it develops, I think that the answer still remains tried and true. Start adapting it into your workflows now. Start practicing with it now. Start reading a magazine or listening to After Hours Entrepreneur to figure out what's working now. So I think the idea is to become a general practitioner of AI so that you can actually understand what's going on. The best way to do it is to get your hands dirty. I love the podcasting platform because it gives you like an excuse to focus on it. It also gives you access to people and developers you might not have access to, which makes you, I can't repeat this enough, it makes you very relevant in your marketplace. When people see you next to the people that are developing the next generation of business in your marketplace, I cannot stress how important that is. You're not just Jim, you're Jim who knows Elon. You know what? You understand what I'm saying here? Those connections are vitally important to your relevancy in your community, in your niche, in your industry.
So just going back to this idea of applying AI, you're very much about the application and making sure that it helps move the needle, so to speak, in your business. Would you say that's enough just to do that? Or should we really be looking at incorporating AI into our own businesses from a more technical perspective? And I know that in some circles, there's a lot of conversation around ensuring that people have Python skills and are playing with Auto GPT, etc. I don't know if you've thought along those lines. If so, I would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I think so. And look, basically every company is coming out with different AI tools. So whatever software you are using, if the software starts to implement AI, use it. Don't just say, it's another thing to learn. No, you should start learning. You should start using it now and you'll be surprised. And the other thing that I like to do, Vinny, is recognize that there's only one Mark. It's hard for me to try out all the different tech. What I really focus on with my team is empowering them to be innovative and try new things. So if I hear of something I think it's interesting, or if my team tells me about something that's interesting, I'll pay them. I'll say, hey, go try the software. Here's the money. Here's a subscription. Go test it out. Tell me what you think. Some of it we love, some of it we don't like. And I cover all of that on my platforms to try to help people, get that step ahead. So I think empowering your team to use it is important too, because then you're learning to example, especially if there's stuff in your business that you don't actually do. I don't do a lot of video editing anymore. So I have my team test out the video editing software to see what they like and we share. What about you, Vinny? How are you using AI in your business right now? I'm curious. What do you do using it for?
Certainly I use Descript, which you mentioned, but I do use it for things like ideas for titles or the show notes, etc. I'm definitely a fan of not necessarily ChatGPT per se, but certainly AI applications, whether it be through some other platform, but almost invariably these platforms are connected on the back end with ChatGPT. In one way or the other, there is an application to podcast production. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the low-hanging fruit. I even had an entire episode that was completely AI generated. AI generated the text, it generated the copy, it generated the title, and then I used a program called 11 Labs to actually record the episode. And so I uploaded my voice, so it actually spoke the episode in my voice. It was really wild. And then at the end of the episode, I popped in and I said, "Oh yeah, by the way, none of that was me. That's all AI generated." And the amount of emails I got, "Holy crap, Mark, I didn't know that was actually, I thought that was you." I was like, no, that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. And that was 6 to 8 months ago. It's even better now.
And it is a bit scary, which brings us back to perhaps one of the things that I started with, this whole idea of copyright and being authentic. Platforms like 11 Labs can easily duplicate people, their voices, and responses as well, given the abilities that we have with ChatGPT, as you've already talked about. Where do we need to draw the line, given the kind of access that people have these days to other people and their content, their voices, and even images as well?
I think that's probably one of the biggest questions that needs to be asked right now. I was at an event this past weekend with Patrick Bet-David and Vivek Ramaswamy, and that was the number one question that I had was, what role does government play in either regulating or developing AI? Because if you're not developing AI, you're not going to be able to compete with countries that are. AI drone technology, there's already AI drone flights that are happening. You're going to be really Terminator 2 type stuff going on. But the answer is I'm not exactly sure. It's going to require a deeper understanding than we have now. It's going to require transparency in what's AI generating and what's not. Now, I'll give you an example. One of the things that's scary, and I like Ron DeSantis. I'm a Floridian. Most Floridians like DeSantis. Not necessarily for everything, but he's brought a lot of revenue to the state, a lot of income to the state, development, stuff like that. There's also no state tax in Florida. So it's pretty nice if you're growing a business here. I have some friends in Cali that are like, "Mark, how do you do it?" I'm like, "I don't pay state tax." So it makes it a lot easier. But his camp, they're in the middle of a presidential primary right now, and he's running against Trump, and his camp released AI generated images of Trump hugging Fauci. And the vast majority of people thought that these were real images, but they were not. They were AI generated. And to me, that's a very scary line. That's a line that I am not okay with, because the way that information moves, let's say 1 million people see that image or see that tweet, they're going to think this is what happened. Trump was embracing Fauci, and this is what happened. And even if that company or that camp or that politician comes back a month later and says, yeah, actually, that wasn't real. It was just a joke, quote unquote. The damage is already done. Everybody's already absorbed that information. So I think that there has to be transparency in what's real and what's fake, because it's going to become very difficult to tell what's authentic and what's not. That is a scary thing. I think we're very close to courtrooms not being able to bring audio recording. You bring an audio recording, the judge's gonna be like, what do I go? Okay. How do I know that's real? I don't know that person actually said that thing. Like Trump, for example, was caught on tape saying something about classified documents, right? Why wouldn't his camp just come out and say, oh, he never said that was AI generated? So I think that type of thing is going to become more and more prevalent. That lack of ability to determine what's real and what's fake is definitely a concern. And I think that podcasting and independent media has an important role to play here, Vinny, because when you release each podcast episode, that is authentically you. That is not AI. That is not a deep fake. That is Vinny who is saying that thing. And I think that podcasting plays an important role in actually protecting your personal brand. If someone in the future comes out and tries to slander me or say I said something, I say, listen, I've got hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content for my podcast. That's what I'm about. That's who I am. That's what I talk about. So I don't know what the hell this is, but I didn't say that. You want to know what I said? Go listen to hundreds and hundreds of hours of the After Hours Entrepreneur, and then you'll get a better understanding of what I stand for. So these are the things that I'm really thinking about right now.
Brilliant. I'm curious, are there perhaps a couple of aspects to this whole idea of using perhaps ChatGPT in particular to our businesses, and perhaps we can niche down a little bit more and say podcasting, that you feel is not getting talked about very much? If so, what would they be?
As far as topics in the podcasting field?
Yeah, the application of ChatGPT to podcasting. What are a couple of areas that you feel don't get talked about very much, but should?
We've already covered a few of them. The automation, starting to use Google Forms with ChatGPT and Zapier is really powerful. Linking up calendar apps, like for example, Calendly is a powerful way to do this as well. I set up a Zap, an automation where anybody who schedules in my calendar is going to get added to different CRMs. But if I'm preparing for a show, it's going to create a Google folder for that show so I can upload stuff directly there. It's going to create a Google document that says, here's the name, here's all the information from the form, but here's also 10 different questions that you might ask this guest. And here's why. And here's where you might go with it. So you can smooth out that system. AI ChatGPT it's great for sending out emails. If you've ever been stuck in front of a screen for 10 minutes thinking like, how do I type out this email? Yeah. AI can help you to get that. AI is a really powerful tool for unblocking that brain fog, for getting things going quickly.
Okay, brilliant. And with this whole podcasting thing, you run an agency, of course. I'm curious. Obviously, you're big on building relationships. I'm curious, what would you say would be your take on case studies and showcasing your services and the impact that you're having on clients? I noticed that you have a whole bunch of testimonials, which is great. But I'm curious, what's your thoughts on case studies?
Yeah, listen, credibility is incredibly important, right? Credible. It's very important. So in that, the credibility doesn't get built overnight. I was just talking to Neil Patel about this. I said, Neil, how do you go from serving mom and pop shops to Fortune 50 companies? Like, how do you get there? And it's about serving one person as best as you can. And then that person tells another person. Now all of a sudden you serve those people as best you can. And the credibility, the referrals, the testimonials, just, they come along naturally. And I just feel very blessed. I just feel blessed to be able to serve people, because for the reasons mentioned before, seeing someone who's really struggling to get their presence known and struggling to get people on the phone, and then going from that to, wow, my calendar is full. I've got all these great opportunities. I'm meeting with the mayor of my city. Like, to see that happen, we need to see more of that. And even if someone can't afford a production package of $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever their desire is, I still feel led to help people. So I have a pro community that meets twice a week. We meet Monday nights and Thursday mornings. And there's a combination of me actually teaching a topic like this, how to execute ChatGPT or how to refine your LinkedIn profile, or whatever it is, how to close more sales, to open office hours where people come with the various problems and questions that they had through the week. They share wins. We meld minds together, and seeing people grow. There's been people who have gone from on the edge of bankruptcy, on the edge of having to go back to a corporate job, to landing one client, to landing 4 clients, to like getting momentum. And like that is the stuff that fills my cup. And so I just want to see more. I just want to see more people seeing success. And I think this is a really unique time for that with AI and the things we've talked about.
So is there a process that you incorporate to capture feedback or testimonials or their success story, so to speak?
One of the things that I do for the podcasters or whatever, you have any business, at the bottom of my calendar booking link for basically every calendar, as far as I know, there's a link to leave a review on iTunes for the After Hours Entrepreneur.
Mhm.
And it's probably 1 out of 5 people will leave a review, but that's still 1 out of 5. So if you are a business owner, or if you're head of the marketing, or you want to get more Google reviews, just at the bottom of every single calendar. And the reason the account, because if it's just at the end of your email signature, nobody's ever going to click on that link. I'm sorry. Nobody clicks on that. But people will leave you reviews if it's at the end of a calendar booking link, because they're already actively part of that process. And so asking for reviews, the other mistake is asking for too much. Leave me a review on Spotify and on iTunes and give me a Google review, because then you've overwhelmed them. They get this like paralysis by analysis, but just ask for one. What's the most important thing? Is it a Google review? Just leave a link at the bottom. Make sure it's a smart link so it's easier for them to leave the review. Just getting people to leave those reviews when they're an active participant in the process is that I found success in that.
Brilliant. Just looking at wrapping this up, Mark, if you were listening to this episode, what would you say would be your top takeaway?
My top takeaway would be use ChatGPT for 10 minutes a day. You cannot afford to sleep on this. It's more important than watching that show that you like. I can't, like I said, man, and it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. ChatGPT is great because it's very powerful. It's an open software, it's just very easy to use. It doesn't have to be, but if you're not using AI on a regular basis, you are exposed. You are exposed. And I don't know what to say. I can't save everyone, but yeah, you need to be using ChatGPT for 10 minutes a day.
Sound advice, and this has been a fascinating discussion. Mark, if our listeners are curious, want to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
You go to marksavantmedia.com. That's marksavantmedia.com. That's Mark with a K, not a C. I love all you Marks with C's, but this is Mark with a K, marksavantmedia.com.
Excellent. And I'm assuming there's a link to your YouTube channel on the site as well. Okay.
Yep.
Is there a social media platform that you tend to lean more towards?
I LinkedIn is probably one of my most active. You can find Mark Savant on any platform.
Okay, brilliant. We'll include links to that in the show notes. Mark, thank you so much for doing this. It's been brilliant.
My pleasure, Vinay.